I like to challenge my colleagues by asking them how much time are they spending looking outside of their own specialty for solutions that could potentially help their clients, their patients. Look, it's hard enough to stay up to date within our own specialty, let alone other specialties. And then, of course, everything outside of what traditional medicine. But our patients are looking for that. And they're going elsewhere for those solutions that could, in fact, be hindering your treatment strategies, or perhaps even supplementing or enhancing them. But are you aware of that? And so part of the doctor's guide, as well as the masterclass fuel, I bring to you insights and of technologies, resources, and solutions that you could potentially implement in your own practice to support your patient needs, but also to give fuel to your own practice. And so join me in these interviews with these different technologies and products and resources that I bring to you as curated products that I believe will benefit you, your practice, and your patients as well.
And I'm Jim Law, and Jim and I are partners. He's truly the artist and the brilliance behind the BioCharger, and I'm the entrepreneur that's helped bring it to market. I think just for people to recognize what problem it is that we're trying to solve is a good starting point. And most people don't realize this, but as a matter of fact, just this past January, the EPA released a report that showed that Americans on average spend 93% of their time indoors. Another stat I'm not happy about, but is real, is that the CDC has now upped the number of American adults with at least one form of chronic disease from 45% 5 years ago to 60% today. 6 in 10 American adults have at least one form of chronic disease. We think that, we know, and there was a study done by the Yale School of the Environment this year. We know that not only do we feel good out in nature when we're exposed to nature's natural healing energies, but they're there around us and they're vital to our health and wellness. So what we believe is that at the cellular level, in order for proper cellular function, there's a Dr. Jerry Tennant who's written a book called Voltage is Healing, goes into the depths of cellular function, and that you have to have the proper voltage. And if we think more about our bodies as an electrical system versus a biochemical system, it starts to make more sense. But your cells can't function properly without proper voltage. And we believe that because we're inside most of our time, blocked by the natural energy sources in nature that provide that energy that we need at the cellular level, compounded by the fact that we're inside, bombarded by man-made energies, which aren't necessarily good for our health. That's creating strain and stress on cellular function. And the body is recreating 2 to 3 million new cells per second. It's the only way it can truly heal and recover and regenerate, anything. And without proper voltage, you're making new cells, just not perfect new cells. So it's difficult for your body to do what it's designed to do, which is heal. And so I think Jim is much better than I am. That's kind of a high level. But Jim can go more into what the energies are and how the BioCharger actually replicates and amplifies those energies, so that there's an alternative to us changing back from modern lifestyle into, pre-modern day.
Yeah, and before we talk about the science, I just again want to put into context, because this is such an important fact that you've just shared with us, Jim. And it's simply this: is that traditional medicine has really focused on the symptoms and the disease, and for the most part, we've looked at it more from the perspective of the biochemical or biochemistry of our body. We know that our neurology is based on electricity and voltage, and it's a part that we've pretty much ignored. And I think this is quite relevant. And the relevance, I feel, is simply this, is that, as we've evolved over in millennia, we've, as you said, we've evolved in nature. We feel better in nature because, we're connected with all the elements of nature. And what are some of the elements of nature? That's electromagnetic waves. It's the electromagnetic field, and the voltages, and sunlight and everything else. And so, yes, of course, we're going to feel better when we're in nature because, it's what nurtures us as well. And so, what I think is so relevant about, your science and your technology is simply this, as what 93% of the people are indoors and people have chronic diseases, there's a root to this problem. And this root is the absence of all these elements that your technology provides. And so, love to hear from you, Jim. You're the inventor, as to, how is it that you actually came about to think of this type of technology, so we could put that into context, and then essentially, how it actually works for us.
Sure. So, for me, it was, my journey began about 35 years ago when I had a landscaping company and started coming down with alopecia. And at first I thought, well, maybe it was my diet. So I cleaned up my diet a little bit, and then it went to my environment. So thinking it being exposed to those pesticides, which we know now may have some issues. I went to an organic farm convention in Missouri, and that was where I first learned about Nikola Tesla, which really started my path down the road of investigating all this. So about a year after learning about Tesla, and I began to experiment with a lot of Tesla coils, different sizes, shapes, geometries, I came across a book called The Secret of Life by George Lahovsky, who was utilizing a Tesla coil with these certain antennas, and he was getting these extraordinary results. And his theories were documented in the book, The Secret of Life, and the results were documented in a book called The Waves That Heal. And, believe it or not, there were almost 20,000 of these devices that were around the world. And there were doctors, surgeons, universities, world congresses that they were investigating the effects of this. And then as I started to look further into it, I came across the work of Royal Rife. And as I started to dig more into it, I found that, at the turn of the 1900s, there were thousands of practitioners that were using this type of technology. And it sort of just fell out of favor. And I was just really curious about the folklores and stories that were built around that, and started to experiment with it. And people started coming over and just using it. And we started just to see some of these really interesting results, which started to, my path down to really understanding what this is all about. And, back to that question of nature, that energy that's surrounding us, that we evolved around, which is primarily lightning discharges. So I believe in this theory of electric universe, and the idea that we have literally 100 lightning strikes on the planet every single second. And each lightning strike is contributing to these hundreds of thousands of different wavelengths that cover AM, FM, shortwave, longwave, UHF, VHF, microwave, all the way up to visible light. And that was very vital for our life. And as I started to research more into this, I found that it was very important. And as we got away from that, or when we got more into our modern lifestyle, where we spent more time indoors, we woke up after hours after sunrise, and we were up hours after sunset. We started to change our circadian rhythms and just not really being exposed to that natural energy. And there was a direct correlation to it. I came across research that was pointing that, even if you are outside, these cosmic rays that, from the lightning strikes on the planet, as well as every other planet that's doing the same thing, or as we know now, these solar flares and solar storms that generate these massive lightning discharges, contributed to this cosmic noise. And even the farthest reaches of the universe you have these spinning objects that are generating these electromagnetic fields that all contribute to that cosmic noise. It's vital, and it varies up and down all the time. And as we had, more of that, it was, research was shown that we had better crops, we had less disease, we had less turmoil, we had less issues around. And as we were exposed to more of that, the opposite occurred. And and then now in our modern day, if you look at the last 5 or 6 years, we just came out of this solar minimum where we aren't being exposed to that natural energy. So based off of all that, I started to research and just try to understand, and come across the works of Royal Rife and George Zahovsky. I realized that there are ways you can generate these wide ranges of frequencies and harmonics. So I began to build on that technology. So and then evolving it now to really understanding the actual mechanisms behind it. So it isn't just this idea of just being outside, but how is it really affecting our body? So as you mentioned earlier, our bodies are electric. Our brains are electric, our hearts are electric, our nervous system's electric, chemistry is electric, cells are electric. And these varying magnetic and electric fields is what really drives chemistry. So when you look at first year biology and you're looking at how cells work, you have this positive and negative charges surrounding the cell membrane. And when there's a sufficient amount of charge, it triggers ion channels. So these ion channels may be the sodium potassium pump that's moving the energy back and forth. It could be moving nutrients, it could be moving hormones, proteins. All of these things are being gated by that cell membrane. And it's been proven if you take these external electric fields, you could actually trigger this healthy cellular function. So what will happen when the cell becomes less healthy is its ability to trigger that healthy cellular reactions are greatly diminished. So when you take these external electric fields, you could stress the cell membrane like a dielectric to actually create those ion channels to begin to move those energies back and forth to deliver the nutrients to help detoxify the cell, because as you're moving things in and out, you're also detoxifying the cell. So, it was shown to me that, these electric fields have a very important part to it. And looking at what we're doing with the BioCharger, we're producing these 4 different energy fields. So I sort of got a little ahead of myself, but the first was that electric field. So the electric field really works mostly on the cell membrane and helping the cell membrane gate. Now there's also a magnetic field. So magnetic fields work completely different than electric fields. So magnetic fields can't stress the cell membrane, but what it can do is it affects the ion charges. So when I mentioned earlier, you have these positive charges on the outside cell membrane, you have these negative charges on the inside of the cell membrane. In a healthy cellular function, it'll trigger to create the ion channels to create that. Well, when the cell becomes less healthy, again, when you produce a magnetic field, what it does is it helps to polarize and concentrate those charges to help trigger again that healthy cellular response in a different way. And that's why some of these devices that are out there that are the PEMF type that are producing mostly that magnetic field, that's why they work so well. That's different than the electric fields, where you may have some things that are like the 10 style units or any of these electric fields that are working more on that cell membrane versus ion charges. Then thirdly, one of the things that the BioCharger produces is these wide ranges of frequencies and harmonics. Much like in lightning discharge, each lightning discharge generates hundreds of thousands of those harmonics and frequencies I mentioned earlier that span that whole spectrum. And in nature, it requires a change in cloud structures and things like that to generate different capacitances to generate the variable frequencies and harmonics. We figured out a way of being able to generate variable frequencies and harmonics through sideband generation. So what do I mean by that? So in music, when you have 2 different notes, you generate harmonies or harmonics. Right. If I change one of those notes, I generate different harmonies or harmonics. So what we found is if you have a fixed carrier wave and you change these pulse frequencies, you generate unique sets of hundreds of thousands of different harmonics and frequencies. And you can actually calculate those and predict them. It follows known mathematical equations. You can apply Fourier transforms and Laplace transformations to actually extrapolate those harmonics and frequencies. So now how do harmonics and frequencies impact the body? So that works completely differently. So that works off of resonance. So as everything is electric, everything is also vibrating. So when you look at on a elemental or an atomic level, atoms are vibrating at the speed of light. So first year physics class, when you're studying the light frequency spectrum as it relates to color, you put different gases in the tubes and it produces specific wavelengths identified for particular elements on the periodic table. And each one is unique. Now, as you make these atoms and now make molecules, now there's a different vibration associated with it. And physicists have outlined that as the molecular band spectrum. So the molecular band spectrum is in the infrared, far infrared, near infrared, down as low as 20 gigahertz. And that's part of the reason why you see some of these devices that are out there that use that infrared, far infrared, near infrared that works so well is because it's literally resonating with on a molecular level. And then below that, you have the magnetic resonance spectrum, which is really what the MRIs are based off of. So in the nuclei of the cell, there's another vibration that's associated with the magnetic spin that is a much lower frequency spectrum. And that goes into the low kilohertz range up into that 20 gigahertz range. So on that magnetic nuclei vibration, there's another set of frequencies. So how does that impact using resonant frequencies? So much like in music, if you take two tuning forks of the same pitch, if I strike one through sympathetic vibration, the other one will start to vibrate. So on a cellular level, the same thing happens. So the idea is if you generate enough of these wide ranges of frequencies and harmonics, you can begin to affect the magnetic resonance spectrum as well as the molecular band spectrum, as well as the visible light spectrum, because we're producing frequencies in the visible light spectrum. And that's working through that sympathetic vibration, similar to like a radio. You have the radio transmitter that's vibrating the antenna at a certain frequency, and you have a radio receiver that's set to that, and you can transfer energy into it. Right. Now we're not affecting that spin of the cell, but what we're just simply doing is adding energy into the system so the cell can work more effectively. So when you add the electric field, the magnetic field, and now the resonant frequencies, you begin to affect cells all in a different way, but still for the common good of making the cells work better. And then finally, we have that visible light spectrum. So, back to nature, that visible light is a very important part of our life. And it's not just that sunlight, but it's actually that light, that blue in the sky. So, that blue in the sky is all those different gases in the atmosphere that get excited to fluorescent that releases thousands of different wavelengths in that visible light spectrum. And that's all also part of that life. It adds to affecting the mitochondrial DNA. It affects the, we've seen it being used for pain relief, depression, things like that. But it's really just, again, adding energy into the system so it works better. So with the BioCharger, we've been able to take all four of these energy types, the magnetic field, the electric field, the radio-based frequencies and harmonics, and the visible light, and combine them all at once to do exactly what nature does through plasma discharge and the visible light spectrum and the voltage and the magnetic fields from the earth to help contribute to this healthy cellular function.
So does this mean that we're going to increase the indoor percentage from 93 to 100 by the time that everybody has a BioCharger? No, this is brilliant, because the reality is that we get so caught up in this modern world, and so we are disconnected from the elements that we have required in our whole evolution. And when you think about it, I mean, just simplistically, I mean, it is the chemistry, it is the electricity, it is the voltage, right? It is the energy, it is the vibration. All of that influences everything. And so, as physicians, we seem to be chasing the end result of all the bad choices that we've made over time. And so what if we could actually you know, connect with nature again with a device like this, that giving us what our body needs, it makes perfect sense. There's no way that you can actually argue against this, because it's a first principle, right? And first principle, it means that, you know, beyond any other further discussion, it makes sense. And what makes sense is we've evolved over millennia in nature, dependent on all these different factors that affects our circadian rhythms, that affects, you know, the vibrations of our bodies, and therefore the homeostasis within that. You know, we've found a way with technology and modern living to completely disrupt that. And I think one of the challenges that most people would incur, if you will, and especially us physicians, is that we don't notice these subtle changes over time. You know, they ultimately end up in chronic disease. And so these kinds of technologies, I think, are critical for us to get access to. And so how does that work? How is that process by which, you know, a client would get access to a product like this, and you know, what is the dosage, if you will, and what are some of the things that they might expect to experience? And as I like to share with, you know, many of my clients when I'm doing regenerative medicine as an example, you may not notice anything right away, but just imagine what you're taking care of.
I can touch on that. There's one thing though, Bart, that I'm willing to bet that there's some percentage of your audience that have a question going on in their mind about, wait a minute, you just described 4 types of energy, and 2 of those, at least 2 of those could be, you know, classified as EMS or EMF, and you know, proactively, I think, Jim, you know, a lot of people ask that question. Jim, would you mind just kind of answering that for those out there who might be wondering the difference between good and bad energy, if there is one?
Sure. Well, I mean, so when you look at the science behind, you know, the EMFs, you know, when you look at the, you know, the power lines, you look at the cell phones, you look at the microwaves and things like that, you know, science says that there isn't really much of an issue. You know, if it's not creating any heating, I mean, granted, you don't want to stick your head in the microwave because of the power levels that would create heat. But when you talk about low levels like cell phones specifically, you know, a lot of science is saying, well, really, there may not be something there. But some of them are actually pointing to it. It's mostly it could be the continuous wave. So when you have a continuous wave versus a pulse wave, so when you look at nature, nature's always about a series of pulses, whether it's the lightning discharges, the 100 that are on this planet or everywhere else, everything is a single event lightning discharge or quick pulses off and on. And, you know, in our modern technology, we have things like the power line, which can't be pulsed because otherwise the motors would be surging off and on. Our communications can't be pulsed because then we would be losing the connection, as you would, you know, and we all know how intermittent connections work with the internet. So if you turn it off and on, that's not going to work. But there is some evidence it's pointing at, you know, some of these things that are actually entraining it. Ultimately, it doesn't allow it to go back to that homeostasis, but it's a continuous wave that drives, you know, a particular frequency, which is completely different than the way nature just does it, and it's completely different than the way the BioCharger does it. You know, at the end of the day, even though it looks like it's running continuously, we are pulsing it, and that's what nature does.
Great. No, thank you for that explanation. And again, you know, there's a lot of confusion, you know, behind, you know, different types of energies and the health and health benefits and the danger or risk issues with that. But obviously, there's a lot of science and research behind what you've done, and the relevance to, you know, how we've evolved over millennia. So it makes perfect sense. So Jim, are there other questions that you have, you know, gotten from other people regarding this? And so go ahead, you know, share with
Yeah,
whoever else you feel.
I think you touched on a couple. What would you expect? What do you expect from this? And so one of the things that when we got together and you know, Jim spent 30 years of his life pouring into studying Tesla, Rife, Lahosky, a guy named Gershwitz who was doing light. So he was really looking and to some degree standing on the shoulders of these, early 20th century, legends that had, made these discoveries and advancements. And what Jim's vision was to combine the best of the technologies. He was kind of MacGyver, if you will, and the very first version of the BioCharger, which is what kind of when I started to get into the picture, was 100% analog. And I mean, it looked like the flux capacitor out of and Jim was kind of like Doc. You could tell that there are not too many rooms you can go in that Jim's not the smartest guy in the room when it comes to this stuff, I would say. But my vision was, okay, look, if we're really going to do something, how do we get this and make it available to people, and not through the medical channels? And no offense, it's just that by the time you do the struggle and do the dance with the FDA, and we had a formal regulatory feasibility study done, and then you have to do the dance with the insurance companies. You're talking about, instead of a $15,000 system, a $150,000 system, we could have gone through all of that in 5 years, and then it would have to be prescribed for a very narrow condition, so that you could kind of be qualified to,
Right.
to let people experience this. So I'm from the Apple days and worked with Steve Jobs back in the day, and then followed him to Next. And one of the things that he always did was said, begin with the end user in mind. So we thought, look, what would be ideal? Nobody likes stuff strapped on them, or they don't like to, we all like to lay down, but to have to lay down on a mat for a certain period of time in a very sterile place, sometimes it's not as comforting as we'd like. So we thought, okay, we want to be able to produce. First off, let's stack these 4 known energy types. Let's find a way to combine them. And the earlier version of the BioCharger proved it could be done. But when we said, okay, we don't want people to have to touch it. We'd like them not to have to exert themselves in any way. We don't want them to have to get naked. I mean, they certainly are welcome to, but it just, again, we want to just be able to make it as easy for people to use. And then we said, if we can make this where one person can sit next to it and benefit from it, how could we make more people do that? And we turned it, we could, because of the resonance and the way that it's measured and controlled and our intellectual property with how we control frequencies, we were able to produce high enough concentrations in each of the 4 fields so that we could accomplish that. 4 people simultaneously sitting within a 3-foot radius of the BioCharger. And that was before COVID. So, that's radius, not diameter. So you got a built-in 6-foot social distancing for those that are concerned about that, but a way for multiple people to get the benefit of it. The average session lasts 15 minutes. What we didn't expect was how people embraced it. The social aspect of it. They call it the modern day campfire. It's just, people really enjoy, and a lot of times you'll have them in health and wellness practices where they might have a group for people with Lyme sufferers or things like that. And you'll never find a tighter bond than people that share, I'm sure you know this, that share some of the same health challenges and can heal together. So that was a long roundabout answer, but the average session is about 15 minutes. That is, we use energy and frequency programs that we call recipes. We're not a medical device. We are manufactured in an ISO 9001 certified facility here in the US to all of the top quality standards, both manufacturing and software development. We have 9 full patents in the US and about 40 worldwide. So we're right down the middle of the fairway. We built a support team so that our culture is that whoever the client is, whatever your application is, we do everything we can to help optimize the BioCharger for you. Right. And one of the things that's really amazing, and we'd love to be affordable enough for everyone to have, but that's just not the case. And so through communications and appealing to people in your audience that might say, wow, this would be a great addition to my business, we're just able to help and get to more people, far more than if we had kind of taken the traditional route. And so we're very proud of that. But these recipes, and going back to Royal Rife, and I'm sure you know more about that, but that's a podcast for another day. Anyone, welcome them to Google Rife and kind of look at what's happened. But what's happened since then is amazing, and there's kind of ties back to nature again. Like Tesla said, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think frequency, vibration, and energy. And it's coming back to that. So the work that's being done with frequencies now in the medical fields is quite impressive. Our ability to control frequencies in very unique ways is part of the special sauce. The stacking of the four energies. So there's light devices, there's cold lasers, there's red light therapy, there's PEMF mats, there's PEMF tables, there's all types of TENS equipment, and even some voltage stuff. There are Rife-like machines and frequency machines. There's just no system that combines them all into one. The second thing is that we, kind of, again, looking at the design, we want to have the community to have a collaborative approach to working with the BioCharger. And we said, if we made this a platform and we built out a cloud infrastructure so every BioCharger was connected, our practitioners and researchers that are using this can find new and better ways to use it.
Nice.
And at the time we released the BioCharger, we had 10 recipes and they were very generic. And we thought, God, if we got to 100 recipes, that would be the holy grail. We have 1,100 recipes today, and customer number one has access to all 1,100 because we designed the cloud infrastructure in such a way that we can continue to enhance it. And it's doing things today that we never imagined the BioCharger could do. And the recipes, again, not a medical device, but they support recovery from almost any condition you can think of. And, if you step back and say at a broad level, you're giving your body the energy it needs so that it can function the way that it's designed at the cellular level. When you take a look more at a focused, when you have folks that have a skin condition, for example, to be able to target a recipe that has known frequencies that can help improve a skin condition, enables us to kind of in that 15-minute session target that desired outcome. So when I said it's a 15-minute session, sometimes practitioners, and if you'd like, I can touch a little bit on how we see our practitioner base and our health and wellness centers implement into their business. But we'll see them offer a 30-minute session to an individual, and it might be a general wellness recipe combined with a targeted recipe for the condition that person might have. And that might go for $50 to $100 if we look at something like that. We have group, the fact that you can have up to 4 people simultaneously, it helps a lot of our clients with flow, where particularly if they're offering, and most do, other treatments or therapies that require a technician or a one-on-one. The beauty of the BioCharger is you can have an administrator run it remotely from her phone or from a laptop, so that it really requires no attendance. Even your clients or patients can run it themselves once they've done it a couple of times. Very simple to operate. But the other thing is it complements the other therapies. So you're getting a compounding effect. And so people don't always know what the root cause of why they feel better is. They just know they feel better. And that's the kind of outcome that we hear. When you say, what do most people feel? Some people feel um, a tingling sensation. They might, a lot of times people say they can feel it in their chest. We don't say anything other than some people feel things, some people don't. People with arthritic conditions or stiffness begin to look at their hands and go like this. I mean, they notice a difference like almost immediately. People that have inflammation or areas of injury very oftentimes say, you know, I feel in my shoulder, I can feel a tingling sensation, not pain, but a tingling, or in their sinuses. So it's evidence that it's working. Now everybody wants to have, but it's subtle. And by the way, you didn't get to that, you know, in 5 minutes or 15 minutes. You got to the condition you're in over a period of time. Give the thing 2 weeks, 3 to 4 times a week, and watch what happens. And people, they'll want it to be a lifestyle. They'll want to come in and use it with or without adjacent treatments. It just, we see that effect. You know, from the Tony events, the Tony Robbins events, where we just did one together with 8,000 people, and we had 6 BioChargers roaring for 4 straight days. Right. We did over 5,000 sessions with 1,500 people, and those people got more from the event than everyone else because they have more energy, more focus. So it's really, you know, people love it. And then everybody though that wants to have a before and after, right? They want to be able to see it, and this is where sometimes a little of it gets kind of sketchy, you know, like the pendulum thing, muscle testing things. And it's not that they don't work, but not everyone would consider those conventional tests. One of the things that we've seen recently, and not everyone's going to do live blood microscopy, which by the way is one of the best ways to see an immediate difference just in your cell formation and oscillation and coagulation. But we've been experimenting with heart rate variability, and that is becoming more widely accepted. We've got several athletic teams that are, you know, that like to use those measurements. Certainly kind of leading edge health and wellness practitioners are moving towards that. And we have, we're very encouraged with a particular series of tests that we've done. We've done over 100 tests in which only 6 didn't show an improvement before and after. You know, with some legitimate technology, and we've tried to fool it, and we can't. And so we're working on some examples of that. But somebody like yourself, we would love to have be, you know, one of our market research. We can't do clinical research, but we can do market research, and we would love, you know, maybe to have you undergo this before and after testing. It takes 5 minutes. You do a 20-minute or 15-minute BioCharger session, and then after, and then go through the results.
You know, and that's a really important component, which is, you know, one of the questions I was going to ask you, you know, what are some of the measurables? And love the idea of live blood microscopy. HRV is great, you know, and I'm going to go so far as, you know, suggesting even, you know, technology like the Aura ring probably would be beneficial to kind of use. And there's another technology, and I'll certainly make those introductions. It's the WAVI, which you may already be familiar with, actually. You know, these are great ways for biometrics. But the thing that you know, I'm getting from you, and also the challenge or the short-sightedness of a lot of individuals is simply this: is that, you know, in you know, looking at what Dale Bredesen has done with his book and science on the end of Alzheimer's, he recognizes that Alzheimer's is the result of 36 different, you know, conditions or situations that's, you know, inducing Alzheimer's. And so we must look at the human body, not from this myopic view of, okay, you got this one condition, let's give you one drug or one thing. It's really a complement of a variety of different strategies. And this is where I think the BioCharger will be incredibly beneficial in any kind of medical practice, you know, without, of course, you know, the FDA, you know, approvals and all these things, because that's just not going to happen this time. But it's not relevant insofar as it's just part. It's sort of like, you're telling people to eat differently, to have a different lifestyle, to do different things, and this will be part of that. But it would be a lot of fun to be able to look at some very specific biometrics to give it some validation, if anything, for the consumer to realize, yeah, it is working. Because as you said, the results, for the most part, I would expect are very subtle. I mean, like you said, it's taken years for you to have this chronic problem. It's not going to happen overnight. And that's the other shortcoming of people and physicians too, is they want those immediate results. No, this is a long-term relationship and a long-term, a lifestyle change. And it's important, but it's an essential part, as I see it, to complement all the other things as physicians or practitioners that we provide our clients, so that they can actually accelerate, their health optimizations rather than taking years.
Sure. One thing I'd like to add to that is, many of our clients use more of the traditional route of, the metrics, that they do the blood work, they do imaging, all sorts of different things. And they are all very pleasantly surprised. I can't say exactly what they, the results that they are, but we move the needle in many different areas, in the traditional as well as the non-traditional.
That's great to know. And again, so how does someone go about and acquiring one of these? They simply just connect with you, and then one of your reps, connects with them.
Sure. We have, first off, we'd love to provide a referral code for any of your viewers. I mean, it means a lot to us to find a way to. We have several individual owners, many times high net worth individuals, athletes. It's not affordable for everyone. And then we have our businesses, and we really want to help the businesses be able to get more out there to make it available for more people. So we'd be happy to provide a discount code to give your audience a $500 instant rebate on the system. But if you just go to biocharger.com, or if you're social media, either BioCharger NG for next generation on Facebook, BioCharger NG for Instagram. Or just give us a call. We have our own in-house sales guides, and again, they're more consultative, they're more educators, and I want to stress that so many of these systems that are coming out are really good technology. Some of them, they all have one thing in common: they're somehow tying back to nature. But there's another thing they have in common that we don't think so good, and that's that most of them lack really good support to be able to really make sure that the client, whoever that is, can get the most out of it. And as I mentioned earlier, we really do walk our talk in that, and have we go through an onboarding process to get you up and running, to get you connected, certified, very comfortable with the system. And then we have on staff folks that help in the health optimization field, a couple nurse practitioners, and folks that came more from the health and wellness side. And then we have some business consultants that help our practitioners and other clients more on the marketing, how to launch it in their area, how to introduce it. We have tremendous lead generation capability here, and many of those leads that come in are looking for a place to go to use it. And so we've got, we love to be able to refer out people to go use it in our clients, and then we have a reciprocating referral program for our clients that have, if you you're down in Florida, if you get some snowbirds that don't want to go without during the summer months, and they're up in Ohio, decide to get a BioCharger, well, we thank them, and each of our clients, we write a referral fee for in appreciation of that. Most of our sales come from people referring others. And I'll close with, we have a 45-day money back guarantee. No one ever returns them.
That's great. And again, my passion is to give my colleagues, additional tools that not only are they able to support their health optimization of their clients, and I prefer the word clients, by the way, instead of patients, and because they are clients, and when we look at them, or when our relationship is more from a client base, then we do things differently. And I think that's important because our clients are looking for new answers. And drugs aren't always helping us. In fact, many times they actually don't. And then the other part, which I find particularly exciting, is that this is all discretionary income. And so what that means is that it's fee for service, and it's not dependent on insurance and other types of regulations. And I think that's also important because it also gives the docs in today's marketplace, that opportunity to really build up their business in the way that they want to, and also maintain their own, independence. And so not being bound to all these types of limitations and regulations, that are imposed upon them, and perhaps appropriately. And I'm not here to discuss any of that, but it makes it a lot harder for them to build a business, especially the number of hours that they spend, on a day-to-day basis, to be able to respond effectively to any market changes. And certainly there are major shifts in the market today. And I would rather see the physicians, being in this central role into educating, their clients, the different types of things that would benefit them. Because unless as physicians we're doing that, what's going to happen is that it's going to be a hit and miss. When the clients go on the internet and find some, wacky stuff out there that could actually do them a major disservice. Now, by curating these technologies and giving them the right kind of guidance, we are actually helping our patients. And so I think that's the major reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now and sharing this information, is so that not only do doctors have the ability to really help patients in new ways, the patients or the clients, they're coming to the doctors because it's a place of trust. And so everybody wins.
They do. And there's one other element that I need to warn your audience about if they're thinking about bringing it into their practice. And that is that be prepared for people that want to use the BioCharger more frequently than they want to see the practitioner. And if you choose to set up a way to allow them access, take a day off once in a while, and the meter still runs. And for about the same cost as a copay, people are getting a lot more out of it. And from a business owner, it's very sticky, and it builds a really good social bond, not only between you and your clients / patients, but among your patient community, and that helps them in some way as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thanks for that reminder. And as docs, we need some of that extra time. Well, I'm going to give you both the last word.
Jim?
Well, I used all my words up, I think, at this point. I'm trying to think of what to add to that. How about you, Jim?
I just appreciate the opportunity again. You wear a lot of hats, Bart, and we are honored that you thought enough of us in the BioCharger to bring us on and share us with your audience. We'd love to hear from them. We're in this for the long haul, and we want to help more people get well the right way. We look at things not just lifespan, but your health span. How long can you really do the things that you want to be able to do, not how long will you live? And those are two very different numbers sometimes. And we want to help extend your health span.
And I appreciate that. And the truth is when I met both of you and discovered the absolute integrity behind not only the science but the business, and that was for me just an absolute convincer strategy for me that yes, this is the right product that I want to be able to promote, because it's important for me that my colleagues get the right tools out there. I'm helping them discover those tools so that they don't do all that research, that's my job. I'm going to do the research, figure it out for them and make their life a lot easier, because, we need the good docs, and the way things are going in today's marketplace, it's a little scary as we get older. What are some of those resources that we can actually trust that are going to maintain our health? And so by giving our docs all the tools necessary, and then the future ones too, to really be able to, meet the client's needs in the best possible way. So Jim, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
and again, there's going to be links available to get connected with the BioCharger group, and certainly I have a community of docs that could also support you as well. So thank you so much. I do hope you found this conversation helpful to you, and you discovered some new resources that you can then provide to your clients, your patients, as well as fuel your business. See, that's my mission as the doctor's guide, and also as part of the masterclass Fuel, getting back in the driver's seat of your practice. Look, it's hard enough these days to stay afloat in our business. We need to start thinking differently. We need to start looking for resources outside of what traditional medicine. And so I'm hoping you're discovering this. And if you'd like more information, just reach out to me. And once again, tap into this new insight, this new information, and make some shifts in your practice.